Welcome back to Pete's Workshop. So a small issue here, the ignition barrel on our Mark 6 GTI is starting to lock up, not able to turn it. So it's time to fix that problem. Now there's plenty of YouTube videos that show you how to remove this from the car. What there's not great instructions on is to how to actually fix the problem. So I'm going to show you how to pull this apart and get rid of the problem that's causing the barrel to lock up. I've just put this small piece of wire. This is 1 millimeter. It looks like copper. It is copper coated, but it is actually a bit stiffer than just copper. This key has to be in the on position and the 2 dots aligned before you can insert the wire. What I found I had to do is just also pull this in this direction and then push the wire in with a pair of long nose pliers. You'll find it goes in quite a long way, and then you're able to pull that out. So you can see here where this wire is sticking out. So that's this wire here. And what that does is it basically pushes this down. This is the clamp that holds it in. So this has a tapered hole where that wire passes through it, and it will pull it down to allow you to slide that out. That's the first step. Now we've got to continue to pull this apart. The next step is going to be to remove this plastic collar that's in here. It's basically like a circlip that's holding all that together. So I'll have to do this with 2 hands, but I'll remove that plastic ring. So as easy as that looks, it is a little bit tricky. But basically pull this side of the ring out of these 2 slots first, and then you should be able to pick something up underneath it just to drag it out. Once you've got it that far, it can come out. This key has to be in the on position before you can remove this lock barrel. So the next step is, I believe, we put this back in the lock position before we can take this part out. Okay, so you can see I've rotated this anti-clockwise to get it into the normal lock position. Then we can see that these parts line up with the identifiers, and this part can be removed. Be careful, there's that little spring there. I'm having a lot of difficulty getting this spindle out, and I believe it's because it's locked up basically. So this isn't in the full off position. I think that needs to be in the fully off position, which is further anti-clockwise, before that will come out. So I'm looking at other ways to help me sort this issue. I've just taken the switch off the back, and I noticed that switch is also, you see how it's offset? Now looking at this, that is not offset. So I think this is another indication that there might be something broken inside, or out of alignment, or bent. But I think this is the reason why I'm having so much trouble trying to free it up. I'll keep wiggling it. All right, really struggling here. Been putting heaps of WD-40 in it just to try and loosen it up. But basically I got it to the point where I could feel this floating. So keep jiggling this key here with a big screwdriver, the key slot, and just feel that this kind of gets into a nice position. And then what I had to do is actually put a little driver, just a screwdriver, next to that shaft down there, and just tap it down while I was jiggling this. And now the spindle has popped down and out. So now I can actually get that out and hopefully get somewhere. And there is the spindle finally out. And there's the broken bit that was probably causing it to jam down in there. That little fella there may have dislodged and been causing my issues. Now that we got that spindle out, I believe this should come out as well. Okay, a couple of springs. Spring-loaded gate assembly. Okay, well, let's look for broken parts. Here's this main spring as well. There's a spring seat that sits in, which you can see here. So you can remove those. All right, got into some better light here. So if we look down in this section, that is broken. So that shelf down the bottom of the first hole should be continuous, but it's actually broken down here at the bottom of the screen. And there's a chip actually sitting in there ready to come out too. So they're the main cause of our issues. So here's the chip sitting here on the edge that's come out of that section down the bottom there. Apparently you can just remove all of the broken bits, as well as this plug in the side and what's behind it, which is that little shaft down there, and it should function perfectly without it. We're going to find out. So we've just got this in the vise. Now we're going to drill a hole in here and then lever that out. And we got one small hole. Now we can go up another size. Yeah, so that plug just keeps spinning. So I've had difficulty in drilling a hole right through it, but I've managed just to sharpen up. This is actually a hardened nail designed for concrete. So I've just sharpened that up a bit, and that looks like that's going to allow me to lever out the plug. I'm gonna need two hands though. Rightio. So we have behind the plug a spring, small spring, which is mangled because I've put the drill bit through it. That looks like it goes into a hole. And now we need to somehow get that thing out. You can literally just push it through from the inside. And I've just put my nice right angle pick through and pushed that little plunger out. Gloves. So it's keyed, you can see that. Doesn't look particularly worn. But yeah, it's got a little angle on it. That would have been the spring loaded part, so this would have moved in and out as well. But apparently we leave those parts out and we're good to go. So I have marred these edges up slightly just by using my steel pliers there. I'm just going to touch all those up with a little file just to make sure all those sharp edges are gone and it's just slightly chamfered, I guess. And here are our relatively clean parts ready to go back in, remembering that we're also leaving these two parts here out as well. Right, down the bottom in here we can see we have a large point and a small point, so they are for the two springs. Easy to identify those. Now before we put that back together, just want to show you how this works as well. So it's actually made up of multiple pieces. This is the steering lock pawl, and those are the assemblies when that all goes together. So now we can see also that this is spring loaded and the inner is also spring loaded as well. So that's what those two separate springs were. And if we look down here, we can see this obviously needs to be all the way through like that before the main spindle gets put through. So that's how that part works. Now, there wasn't a lot of grease in here, but definitely some lubrication as well. I'm just going to add some of this white lithium grease, which is easily sprayed in, which is good. Just going to add that in the relevant spots. It's pretty good stuff. It goes on thick and kind of stays there, which is good. So I've cleaned this out with some brake cleaner. It's done a nice job, and now I can see all the little wear marks as well. So those are the places where I'm just going to put a little bit of the grease. Next thing we'll do is pop this spring and its spring seat down the barrel, and there we have the spring inside. Right, so the spindle needs to go all the way through the center there. You can see that if I just push the lock down, the hole's still obstructed. So I actually need to push the carrier block down as well, and that before that hole is able to be vacant for the shaft to pass through. Now I did pull this spring out, which is not required. You do not need to remove this spring at any stage. It's a little bit tricky to get back in, so don't move it. So I really just wanted to show how this actually works. So right now I'm in the full on position. So if I release, push and in a little bit as well, and so on is obviously releasing the steering lock. Back is in the off position, and that's where the steering is going to be locked there. So to get the spindle out, you need to be able to have this in a position where you can use a screwdriver and move this up and down. And that was my problem, is that I wasn't able to do that. So the other thing is, once you release this to that off position, to get that spindle out, you're also going to have to push down on these here. Then you can push from the other side, and you can see that's come out quite easily. So knowing how things work is going to make things much easier when you have to do this job. So I am also pushing the screwdriver in to do that as well. But now we're ready to reassemble. Here we have another part that is in multiple pieces that fits together in like a bayonet style. So that will rotate around that. Once you've got it locked in, it won't come out. That way it can. So now this keys into the bottom of the spindle down there, and we just need to work out, because this can go in multiple ways, so we need to work out how this fits in. Right, so to put this back together, we need the steering column in the unlocked position. So this is down. Now when we look down in here, we can see we've got this leg of the spring, and next to that, behind there, that little perch is for the spring here. This little spring sits onto that perch. So again, we also need to make sure the keyways are pretty much aligned. So this goes down in this direction, and we give it a wiggle. Now in that position, we should be able to operate the lock, and we can. So now we know that is in the right position. All right, so now we work out how to put the barrel back in. And don't forget to put the retaining ring back in. There we go, holds that in nicely. All right, so we've got the two dots aligned, and I've got the bit of wire through, which passes all the way through this point here, just to the end. Now we can have a look. We've got this point here is for this connector, and the column must be in the unlocked position. Now we should be able to push this in, hold this together, and pull the pin. Before you let it go, just give it a little wiggle, And that still hasn't caught for some reason. So something's not quite right yet. All right, so some things again we need to know. Definitely this connector goes between here, and you can see how far it goes down as well onto the body of this part. Now at the moment I've got this fitted and working, but I'm going to take it apart again just to show you what we need to do. So I'm going to put the wire down, remove this, and show you what position it needs to be in to get this back together again. Right, so I've had a bit of a practice here. At the moment it's in its locked in position. The wire is fairly loose. I've just got it through to where it needs to start pushing on that. And you can see just with that little bit of jiggling, it's now in position. So now this should remove like so. So that's how you get it out. Now, to get it back in, as we said, we need this in the unlocked position. We can see we've got the spindle at approximately like 2 p.m. Now, the trick here is this doesn't need to be in here, this bit of wire now. We can remove that, and you can see that this comes up as well. Okay, that's fine, because what we can do is, the other thing to know is that this part, plastic part, can rotate on the metal part. Okay, so that I didn't realize before. That's very good to know. Right, I've worked it out. So this plunger, if the key is in the wrong position, this plunger isn't low enough. So we do need to rotate the key until that plunger goes down. Okay, then we should be able to put this into the body. So let's try that again. So I'm holding the key. Yep, we can see how far that goes down, so that's nice. Push that in. Now it's kind of engaged in the assembly. Now we can rotate this where it needs to be, and we can just wiggle the lock, and there it is in position. So now we can check the operation. Key comes out, steering wheel lock is on, key in is the on position, and rotate a bit more for crank. And we can check our switch location there as well. Now I can put the electronics back on it. Right, so we know that this is in the locked position, steering wheel locked, key's not in there. If we look at here and how this switch aligns onto the back of it, we know that this is going to turn anti-clockwise in this direction to go into start mode. So this one is going to go clockwise. So we need to make sure we've got this all the way anti-clockwise, and we can see that it's pretty much in the vertical plane. Now we can line this up and it should all go back together. And that felt good. Clips are in. Now let's test it. And crank. That all feels good. And I can't hear any plastic creaking or anything, so I'm happy that that switch should be good. All right. Right, now we have this connector in this location. There we go. That's good to go. Better put that security tab back on. Right, now the lockout solenoid, I'm just going to put a bit of grease on this because it had some. And this literally slides in. So this is the solenoid that won't let you get your key out until your foot is on the brake, or the car's in gear, I should say. And I've just realized I've left this retaining ring out. So let me pull that apart and pop that in. And all back together again. And it works. Problem solved. So these are the parts that we've left out of the ignition barrel. I believe what they are for is so that you cannot engage the starter motor after you've started the car without removing the key fully and reinserting it. So there is a small risk there, but if you know how to drive a car, you won't be trying to start it while the engine's running.